Good morning. Or whatever it is, wherever you are. Last time, I got some additional marks on here to kind of track where my various limits were. But it's a lot of stuff. And to a certain extent, since we're picking by two factors, it's still going to be a lot of stuff. But like this doesn't need to be here most of the time. This doesn't need to be here most of the time. This doesn't need to be here most of the time. The thin line. We might want to show those when we're moving the appropriate factor. I'd probably want to show the entire curve, which is going to make things a little bit more interesting. Particularly because those are all individual little sub-objects. And the other thing is, I think that I've been drawing this stuff on top of everything. So like if we go into here, I think that's being calculated like completely separately. Right, 'cause, yeah, that's a more of a global parameter. So that might be within the item because it always has to be lined up with it. So the first and most obvious things to do are to fix the ones we've got. So we've got difficulty tweaking for this item. Which has previously been moving the curve. I'm now wondering if I should be trying to tweak it within the curve, which is actually the notes per second selection, but that's not really a harder and easier thing. That's just a wiggle. But maybe I need to have some sort of per song bump. Anyway, the arrows are in the wrong position. Pick screen. We're not going to want this while we're reloading a bunch. Those arrows are probably a song list item thing, which we've got a function for. There's our big draw. Difficulty arrows on, difficulty arrows off, which sets them to a particular position. Because the range can also be set from upstream. So that's being times flow width right now. Right, because the range we're using is actually the range of the notes per second. Which isn't necessarily the thing that's going to get bumped. Because that's really this line right now. So we're currently passing that flow and range. Difficulty arrows on. Current flow, right, we did that in. Do I have that curve? What did I do? Um, Score bound is what that would really be kind of displaying. And that's not selection range, but we did set it up to pass something in there to separate the arrows. Hmm. And that's the value we used to use. Oop. Now we have to change tabs. What did slow off? Wrong button. Getting drawn behind some stuff. But it's at least in the right position. And that seems to be roughly affecting the right thing. Now it's not the effect. What it's affecting it by is not right. That's another layer. Is this song list item? Well, because when you're not tweaking it, you don't want the arrows in the way of stuff. Because those are always there. We could probably use a smaller range on this. Okay, that's too small. So that's one. And assuming that's how I want to keep it, because that's not it's sort of indirectly controlling what we pick, but it's not necessarily going to have a big effect on what we pick. So I'll have to see if that works. Wiggle is going to get a little weird. Because I don't currently have any rendering for that. We could do the total allowable range. Set wiggle on. Song list overlays. Place wiggle is just a stage number, so it is taking right, because I did the variable flow at some point. With the variable wiggle. And that's placing it directly in that space without considering. Now wiggle is, this is the one I can't really represent well. Because it's relative to each item what its range is. I know, I captured that, I think. And then I just stopped drawing it, maybe? Okay, so that's something different. Yeah. I may have been putting different values in there earlier. So what we would need for that would be its top and its bottom, and it is a tweak on top of that, which is no, it's wiggle. It's a singular thing, but it ends up being based on. Where does that go into? That goes into target. Top to bottom, wiggle goes within that range. Right, so there is a setting. It's 0 to 100, which is really 0 to 1. Wait. Right, bounding within that range because we expand it. How do I represent that? Or the range of that? I could represent the entire. Well, you can't represent it as a single line anymore, is the trick. Because it's going to be a different range on every song, and that gets to do a really messy, messy thing. Unless we actually record top and bottom where available. which is going to move this from an overlay as a single line going through everything to an individual song item thing because otherwise I have no grounds to place it because it's a ratio. I could... I guess I could place it based on the limits of the currently selected items? And just say, well, if we shrink that, it's probably going to shrink everything. But it's either that or record top and bottom, and then try to set up something that visualizes that when we're dealing with it. Hmm. Yeah, my selection method might leave a little... I don't know, it's the single wiggle factor. It's the range of behavior we want here. So then we could have a mode. Although maybe it's a flip. Unfortunately, it has to change a lot of things. So the idea... we try and create a visualization like that when it's relevant. So I am slightly bothered by the fact that we're supposedly using this as our selection cutoff, and we do seem to have a hard line here. But it's not lining up in my drawing. Set size, NPS low plus NPS high, PS baseline. And somewhere there should be NPS lower bound. Lower bound width scale baseline. Oh, maybe there's a minimum factor in the selection range that's also affecting things. But I just see no variation in this boundary, which has got me kind of weirded out. Which tells me that our low selection oh, because this is we're calculating a center position and then going by the width. And then taking this. Wait. No, we've got the right brackets in place, I think. But that is a difference in placement of those things. How are those not ending up on the same point? If we took this out, then it would be centered on there, we would expect. That's not centered. Now, flow range. Yeah, there doesn't appear to be any transformation setups on that. Nothing on that. How are we getting different values for that? Because if that's being bounded, oh, is this range? And that's low and high, which is beyond that. It's target. We're using top and bottom, which is before range comes into it. Oh, that's right. We were moving it in by the range. Wait. No, I think I did something wrong here. We move it in by the range so that when we do selection, it absolutely stops there. So top and bottom are the points inside the range. Right, so if I want to cheat and draw this, then it's actually bottom, let's see, bottom. Minus range and top plus range. Because that's what it can actually select from. Or what it could potentially select from. But I need to have a separate setup for that, or like a mode switch or something that maybe switches my... Either I have a new box or I move that flow box. Or that range box. Out to here. Hmm. So then wiggle would essentially be representing at each step this boundary and well, that's an absolute cutoff. But that's the range we're selecting the wiggle in. So then it would be a factor within that box on every one. And right now, those numbers are in the range of 0.3. Actually seems like a lot for 0.3. Right, because right now the curve is the same between the high and the low. And that's just the amount of wiggle we've got. So on each item, actually that's not the entire range, but that is going to be a scaling factor for it, maybe? Oh, plus and minus of center, so it almost have to have the pre-wiggle curve. Or I guess I could do the two curves that represent the top and bottom range of that. That would directly give me the 2 points. Now our baseline curve is, that might actually break down in high wiggles. Hey GJ. As I'm taking a curve from the smallest possible value to the highest possible value, allowing for the inside of the wiggle, and then bouncing that around. So the range, I've came up with a new idea for how to pick songs, and I'm trying to figure out how to adjust all of my setting overlays. And hopefully remove a few of these things, except when they're being changed. We're going to have to add a bunch of new settings to set those things as well. So I've got this variation that happens, and I'm trying to figure out a way to represent the amount of wiggle that is allowed as some sort of visual overlay on this. Well, wiggle is taking a curve plus or minus, so that would just be that baseline curve plus or minus that amount. So what I'm showing right now is the notes per second value picked from that curve. Yeah. That doesn't tell me what the actual value of that thing is. We need our top and bottom points to do that, actually. And then I would need like a baseline curve for that to have a center point to draw the boundary points. I don't necessarily know what that's based off of here. And this is one reason I prefer the simpler model, because it's easier to explain and do these things, but I just wasn't satisfied with the results, and I might still be not perfectly satisfied with the results, but this is what we got right now. So I almost have to stick a wiggle center curve in there. Yeah, I mean, it's programming, but I'm essentially defining ways of picking parameters. So this is currently a flat line, but it's still technically a thing. We've got an upper bound so that the first and last songs won't be too fast, and I don't like it that it's sudden on one side, not smooth on the other as much. I'm trying to get a little bit of a rise and a fall in the overall selection, and then I'm varying that. So that's why I keep talking about curves. And the visualizations are still mostly old stuff, so they're not really helping. This is like wiggle base is that. So we've got that information in here when drawing. If I rejigger this. And this can go back to low, and this can go back to high. And this thing has to be drawn on a per item basis. Yeah, I don't necessarily like that we have all of these factors going into it now, but I didn't have a simple way that gave me everything I wanted. It's like I don't want songs that are too slow, and that's just an absolute factor. I don't want songs that are too fast for a certain point, and that's kind of an absolute factor. And then we want variation within that space, and I'm trying to limit the lowness of the score without limiting the highness of the score, because it's like, well, if I do really well at it, that should be fine as long as it's not too slow, while also creating some variation in speed and difficulty. So it's like if you write out, just even in English, that list of conditions, that's complexity. We're limiting by different numbers in different ways and different numbers. Maybe you could do variation simpler. Yeah, so right now I'm drawing the upper and lower notes per second pounds. I think with what I just did. These thin lines are the score bound. And then this ends up being the notes per second range that's allowed. And then that previous thing was the range of notes per seconds that we have after filtering by score. I guess it makes sense that if you're allowing everything up, it floors out at that. And then we've got some bouncing that also includes a little bit of sort of a dramatic art type thing within that. And I do eventually want to put some variation on the hill of that, so it's earlier or later you get some variation on that side. But should be fairly easy to add later. But what I want is some sort of variation for or visualization of the amount of wiggle we have here. But that's a little bit variable with each item, so it's hard to describe here. Because it ends up being percentage of the notes per second range. So you have to have the range to do that. So that gives us the range. This is going to move it to a per item thing. Because we can start out by drawing something Right, we defined our baseline curve. So we'd do plus and minus that for some sort of boundary line. I'll need better conditions for this. I think we're going to want to replace this while doing it. How about we do S, NPS low, NPS bottom. I already selected something else. S, NPS high, NPS top. Oop. Song list item 294. Oh boy. I guess there's no else if. Then. If else. And. Oh. If it went that way, then we would have to be like this. Unless Lua has like an else if. Aha, okay. So that NPS topo. Alright, so then we are something we passed down that we are in this mode. We have stages arrows, difficulty arrows. It'll pretty much follow from stages arrows, but oh, difficulty arrows are left arrow and right arrow. Well, actually, it sort of follows from this. Could I just reuse that? Not really. Because if I just use the arrows to represent the range, what does left and right mean? So that's why I have to put the arrows on one edge. So I could try using that briefly. So we did a wiggle base. Difficulty arrows on. What is this? Set selections. Okay, so we're counting on going through here to do this. Oh, you know what? Your scaling is probably wrong. XY flow width. Yeah, this is more in notes per second space. So you can't quite do this. It's a different scale. But there's no scaling or anything in here, so you could probably still reuse the arrow. So wiggle arrows Well, this is going to be wiggle on. I might be able to use these visible to trigger some other stuff. Are going to go at a position that is... I almost the thing should just pass it through. Normally going to go at a position that is there. I think range for this is going to be fixed. I don't know if these numbers are going to make sense. This is going to be notes per second space. Especially these numbers might not make sense at all. NPS scale plus NPS baseline. And then from the pick screen, I think... Wait, settings 1. Stages arrows on. I guess we only want that on current. And technically this works because they're the same arrows. Alright, so this is wiggle base. Oh my god, the value is still called score wiggle. Yeah, I might have some adjustments to make there. And error. Nope, I forgot our else if. Oh, and how about... Oh, notes per second has a negative factor to it. So that might be semi-accurate, given that we've got our floor in place. I might go ahead and put this on all of them for comparison. What do we do wrong here? Although, actually, that's going to mess with things because they are the same arrows. So I might have to make that like left-right arrows or something. There's some curve there, but it still feels very wrong. So I guess you're going to have to be plus, and you're going to have to be minus, because you have a negative factor in there. What am I doing wrong? Oh, because that's just a 0, 1. That needs the data for the item, which is why I was thinking more of a flag I could do during the other things. So otherwise, you would also have to be cognizant of... Well, I guess I can always set their positions if they're available. That thing still controls visibility. But then I would need dedicated arrows for this because we also have the difficulty mode. Alright, so the XY... I don't even necessarily set, but I'm going to get the arrows again. So we were pulling out this stuff as our temporary conditions. So our position is... what is it? Flow dot base wiggle, or wiggle base. Well, let's see if we can at least get there. And... right, because it's still 0 to 1. And we need to be... plus cell.nps bottom. Actually, let's just start with that, because that will... well, we still need a scaling factor. I actually would have expected more from that. So what we really need is... wiggle base plus the... oh, plus the score range. Which is the thing we don't currently have in here. And we can fudge it for now. We need NPS bottom. We need to get the center of that. It's the center of that? No, because that factor, the wiggle is the factor within there. There's the flow range. Oh, we did a join here at some point. I think I'm going to take a short break. Be back in a few minutes. Alright. Oh, actually, that's all I can take. Probably should have made more space for that.
So wait, on the debug side, like on the development side, is there coordinates for you guys?
Coordinates?
What?
Like X, Y, and Z.
Coordinates. I know of nothing like that.
Because the game has to know somehow. So
Yeah, well,
why not
I mean,
display
we've
it as
definitely
well?
seen debug tools in some of the devs.
Todavía no se despierta.
Ah, a ver, sí. Sí.
Vale, yo lo veo bien.
Vale.
Métete en un arco.
Let's have a little heart-to-heart. Have a seat.
Am I riding a ghost bike? Oh, that's cool. So I'm gonna clip this.
Many viewers, may as well just start the game. So, as you probably know, Oxygen Not Included has created an
Sorry, new baby. We have Max, baby. Was it? Okay. Well, let's see what happens with this. Bye, baby. So... Okay, so you can empty water into it as well? So...
Well, welcome back. So we need to calculate top to bottom plus top to bottom divided by 2 is the center of that thing, which is... So that's just arbitrarily picking center. So this could really be thought of as times 0.5. Left arrow, NPS bottom, plus top minus bottom, divided by 2, times... I mean, even just times 0.5 will give us a baseline if we can place something in about the right spot. Oop. We're still not placing it anywhere near the right spot. What the heck? Maybe I'm still setting the position here and that's coming along and replacing it? I didn't do both of them. I didn't think. Oh, I guess this was still something, wasn't it? Okay, those are just two different things. I was doing left arrow is the center, the other is something else. And then times 0.5. This is going to be times flow dot wiggle base n. Interesting. Right, the shape is being defined by the range changing. So they're on top of each other. But that's the center line about which we wiggle. So we would want the arrows around some kind of mark at one of the edges. And these arrows would probably want to be layered higher as well. Since they're only used in certain situations. Alright, so now we need our bumps to either side, and we need to... I guess when we turn wiggle on, we have to... Or I have to be able to do all of this stuff when I set the value. Well, actually, if I just pass through what? What are we passing through? Well, we need the selections item specific things, which are only given to the drawing function presently. So either this has to be calculated outside of the function, or we're using a bunch of scaling factors. Well, it'd be the stuff not involving scaling factors. Flow width, NPS scale, NPS baseline. So it would be, you'd have to calculate all of that number and pass it through. And the arrow adjustments could do the plus and minus from that. But we still want to say, oh, well, in that mode, which is still, I guess, arrow on, arrow off, we can turn off some marks. And then that's going to have to care about whether we've got NPS top or NPS bottom. And then somewhere in times plus See, this is the left arrow, but we're doing negative. So were you plus like 0.04? Did that even matter? No, that did not matter. Did not matter a lot. Oh, okay, so first of all, I'm moving them in the same direction. Yeah, that did something, but not enough. And this is not taking into account the score factor at all, which means I now have to get that down into there. Actually, wasn't... Yeah, my factor to wiggle was a line. So that goes in as a factor. I think. Yep. Let's put the symbol near times. What'd I do? Which file was it? Song list item 110. Oh, yeah, that's not enough. So we got you. Oh. Okay. Okay, so that should be the bottom of the range. And then I have to have a mark that we use in that mode. It's the center of there and is the other end of our wiggle range. So we have. No, this is our what? Our bound marks, kind of. I mean, I guess a quad is a quad. Wiggle. Wiggle high. So if we have, well, set wiggle arrows on is also going to do and then all this has to be visible off. Those are no longer equivalent. If we have our upper and lower bounds, and I still have to put proper conditions on this. So wiggle low is wiggle low. And this goes to that's how we have the range. Except you are going to be plus, and then we only show this in this one mode. Which means could probably. Do I set the color of anything down here? Not really. My, what a lovely mess, though. Well, I messed something up bad. There it is. Which means that this stuff that I copied down here doesn't actually work either. Copy paste errors. Eagle. Copy paste errors once again. So is it not set, or is it behind something? Oh, you need to have your size set as well. Which is probably going to be like an NPS mark size thing. Bound mark. Maybe I want to be using that as a single quad for the range? So that is kind of the expected effect. Or the old visualization. You know what? We actually were setting flow here. But that would make that, instead of high and low marks, that would be slightly different. We have to set the width based on 2 points. Let's see, are there anything that we can take as common here? Local NPS range equals cell.nps top minus cell.nps bottom. I think it'll take care of most of those. Then there is the NPS range times that. So we use NPS range, but this is a plus and it's times something variable. And sometimes something variable plus a factor. We almost have wiggle base plus wiggle range. Now I guess the arrows could actually be done in pixel space. That might make sense. And then we have to have a bunch of stuff. It's NPS bottom, NPS range times... I know the high and low arrows are all down there. Flow range... XY. So now we need, for all this stuff, we need to know what's our total NPS range. We need equals cell dot NPS bottom, well, it's one of these, minus the arrow bump. And can we operate in pixel range there? Looks like we might have one parenthesis too many. And then range top is plus that. So those are all pixels. So if we set the size to range top minus range bottom, and the XY, so this is going to be a range top minus, no, this is a, now we're back doing this again. Range bottom plus range top minus range bottom divided by 2. Our left arrow goes to range, let's see, these are all the bottom, and then this is some pixel bump. Right arrow, range, bottom, plus 10. And then we just don't have wiggle low and wiggle high. Because we're reusing an existing quad. Okay, the arrows need more bump. And we're always drawing that particular range. I should probably see if I've got a number I can use or that I need to find for that. Flow mark. No, because actually 10 wasn't enough. Arrow. Alright, and now we want that range effect to only apply in that mode. So, if ooh, on bad self. It just hasn't been constructed yet? What? Maybe this is the dot versus colon thing. Or there isn't a way to ask if something is visible. Lua, SM5. Is this it? It doesn't work well with this color scheme. Well, maybe it sort of does. This is probably an actor. Oh, maybe it's gonna be like get visible or something. Yeah, okay. The API is kind of a mess of different styles. Okay, what? I must have got my settings backwards in pick. Wiggle arrows on. It's supposed to be settings 2 when I swap their order around? No. Oh, wait, did I do left arrow? Yeah, that's left wiggle. What? Is there another left arrow that I'm not in scope? What? Then it's not happening here. So it seems to be triggering on difficulty arrows? Left arrow, right arrow, left arrow, right arrow, left wiggle, right wiggle, left wiggle, right wiggle. What? Oh no, actually that is once. Well, did I reload after fixing that? Okay, so the arrows are in the right place. Is this possibly a one cycle update lag? Meaning that this has to be after we do that. Ah, yep, it's update lag. Because that's going through and saying all the properties based on things. And we were using that visibility as a key. So I see. So what that's moving is our score boundary. We've got that wiggle, so I can basically remove that overlay now. Stage arrows. That's item. Wiggle left and wiggle right. And place wiggle. Are there any other song list overlays? Okay, that is the actor frame. Nothing directly interfaces with it. It's just set and place. And then we had a variable to use for that. That's what was controlling the on-off before. Reset selections. Place the wiggle. It was a convenient place to do that. No, wait. You're a child of that? Did I? Oh, song list overlays. So it's just this stuff in the initializer that goes away. Which means we still need the variable. Which was... I probably haven't saved this yet. Maybe I have. Maybe I haven't. Okay, settings text. And we're only directly referencing it. No, wait, actor frame, yeah, name equals, init command equals. And then these things are still, wait. Setting line? Wiggle left, wiggle right line. I'm not sure what setting line is for. We've got left and right. And that line had the arrows on it. Settings text. Oh, that stuff kind of needs to move, but that's been a project for later. So now we only have that when we go in here. I kind of don't like all the little arrows, but that's sort of representative of what we're doing. And that's just extra options. Alright, so that gives us better visuals for that. And we probably shouldn't commit with iterations down. Fix, wiggle, adjust, overlay. So we still need a way to set the upper and lower NPS bounds. Let's see if we can fix the... Well, I want to fix the default difficulty interface. And I might have to fix it more as time goes on. But right now our proportion adjust is wrong. So bump flow is using manual flow weights. Actually, do we have an arc weight? Which gives me 2 factors. Which I think means they're just inverts of each other. Yeah, 1 minus factor. The manual flow. So the idea I had here was to try and get 1 interface for 2 settings, which I think I'm going to need to add a separate thing that lets you adjust them individually because that gets weird sometimes. But for I just want to bump this song, it might work. So I think that this is going to be start times 1 minus. So we're going to be turning the middle factor. Arc weight. You need a factor that we may eventually make variable and a stage number. And then local, no, factor. Start factor equals 1 minus mid factor. Which means we're always going to be bumping both of them, which might not be what we want. And I also want to move the actual number display somewhere. Oh, and Well, maybe we won't reload enough. Alright, so if we go up 83.56, solo was actually high, but 84.53, 85.50, 86.47. Oh. So having those be inverse is actually a little bit of a problem here. That should represent the weight we're having. Or I'm trying to have something that represents the amount of influence that's having on it. But making it strict inverse maybe I actually need to be doing more complicated math here. Well, no, because that's how I'm putting the weights through. We're going from the low point to the high point. I might have to be doing more complicated math. Start times factor plus middle times factor. Is that not right? We start off at 0. Wait. Our weight starts at 0? Right, so was 1 start value starts off at 1, middle factor size starts out at 0. We ramp up to middle and back down. So that should be the amount of influence they're having. Oh, no. I was thinking letting the 50s go up, but it's inverse. No, that's supposed to be making it harder. Oh yeah, I'm selecting harder. 83, 56, 50, yeah. I'm just not thinking straight. But it almost seems like we're taking bigger steps on the mid than we are at the low, which is exactly the opposite of what I want. So if we get a factor of 0, which we should be pretty close to 0 here, maybe not exact. Why? Mid factor 0, start factor 1 minus that. I guess I have to do some printing here. Because the numbers are apparently not what I think the numbers are. And what was that print command? Ooh, report script error. Does this all have to be... That is a string concat. Mid factor. Start factor. $1.5. Pardon? Pardon? Oh, I got my parameters backwards. That'll do it. That was your additional parameter. Okay, so now we expect lots of change in the low parameter and very little change in the high parameter. Fix, start mid, and mid waits for difficulty adjustments. Then we'll have to see if that's usable for actually changing song selections with all the extra stuff we got going on. The other thing I need to do is I need to move the overlay. Song list overlays, settings text, name setting line. Oh, it must be, I was thinking text line. Screen width times 0.5. 0.05. Oh, within its parent container. So this isn't necessarily a song list overlay. Oh. Okay. Oh, that's screen width. That's that text is kind of crummy UI in general. I guess really I'd want to be displaying that, like, top and bottom and that would almost turn into some sort of overlay line thing. Where we had limit and limit. Actually, if I overrode individual song range instead of having this thing visible, or rather I want to have that only visible when we're tweaking things. So I could have some sort of flow takeover when we... the difficulty arrows are always on, so you have to have some other way to indicate that we've bumped that. That didn't save for some reason. And I might be able to put it back here depending on the text we've got going on, but it'll be kind of in the way of things. Yeah, that's over a little bit too far. So that's not a good place, but at least it's not overlapping things. It's a patch. I need to add a full set of settings for low and high. I need to add a full set of settings for notes per second ranges, and some things are now misnamed. Score wiggle is not really score wiggle anymore. It's kind of a notes per second wiggle and not really. Move setting printout to non-overlap area. Still looks bad. I guess I'm still going to need like notes per second bound and stuff when I start doing settings for those. Don't know what that was about. So that's about where we were before. So that was all setting stuff. It won't really make any difference to gameplay. Screen could still use some cleanup. And I guess I could turn some things off for now because they're not really functional. Man, I have to put in a init command in here to turn these off here. How about red? NPS mark. Does Lou have a block quote? It's been a little bit. Okay. NPS lower bound, NPS upper bound. It's a little bit less noisy. And where did I put score bound? So that would be back to what we'd want to display normally. That will sort of work there. Although now there's no mark that that thing is on. So we'll need to have that. Oh. We kind of need that because that's the baseline for what are we what's our setting working on? Or maybe I could only show that if you've bumped it, but then yeah, I guess I'd have to show it for the current item, and then maybe the rest of them if you're tweaking it. Disable NPS bounds for now. Ooh, that's gonna have quite a little peak there. notes per second wise. All right. I think that getting into any of the other adjustments is going to turn into a pretty big project. So that's where I want to switch over to actually playing the game and get in a little bit of not sitting around today. Then have lunch and come back for Ask Junior later. So that's it for programming for now. Thanks for all the hosts. And looks like the usual suspects. I'm usually programming in the mornings, Stepmania a little bit after. Sometimes it takes longer than this. We're doing a decent wrap-up point today. I will need to change some stream settings. I'll be back in a few minutes to do Stepmania. If you want to hang on, great. If you don't, great. But yeah, be back in a little bit.